G'day everyone and welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight. Matt Miller with you. Joining me today is a guest that I haven't spoken to in a couple of years, and that's my fault. So let's bring him in now, Doug Drexler on Skype. Thanks so much for your time today, man.
Hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. I think I was blacklisted for a while there.
Larry Nemenchek took your spot. He kept coming back every year. But you're back, and the last couple of times that we've spoken, we've been very generic and an overview of your time in the golden years of Trek, which is what I like to call them in the 90s.
They are.
Let's get specific. So, creating an alien a week, what was that like?
Well, I mean, you know, I was part of the Northeast makeup clique. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dick Smith. Dick Smith is like, check him out, Google it. He's like one of the greatest. There's an Australian
Dick Smith, but I don't think he's the one you're talking about.
Oh, I don't know. Well, check this guy out. He did The Exorcist and Little Big Man and Amadeus, and he's one of the greatest character makeup artists of all time, and he was from the Northeast. I'm from New York, and I ended up hooking up with Dick Smith, and that's what got me started. And when I came out to LA, it was for Dick Tracy. And it was like second season, Next Generation. And I was going nuts the whole night. I mean, whenever I got a chance, I'd run over to see Mike Westmore, you know, and visit the sets and stuff like that. But as soon as we were done with Dick Tracy, basically, I went over to see Mike Westmore, and I literally begged him. I mean, really. To work on Star Trek. I mean, that was it for me. And I never thought in a million years that the show would come back. It seemed so impossible, much less with me living on the East Coast. But so Mike invited me to come work, and I was a lot of time in the lab because I knew lab work. I knew how to make molds and run foam latex and stuff like that. But also I got to put makeups on too, which was really great, you know. And there were days where it was just, well, every day really was a big makeup party, you know. You got to make up Klingons, but the thing is that Mike Westmore is such a doll. He is so much fun and so inspirational and so up all the time. There's never any tension or anger with him. I've never experienced it. So it was always just a ton of fun. And you knew you were working on Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. I mean, that's part of the thrill is having come onto the show while Gene was still there. I mean, I wasn't in meetings with Gene Roddenberry, but I used to see him on stage and we chatted. That was the biggest thrill of all, to know that this was Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. And I always thought that Rick Berman did a pretty good job. They mostly lashed the wheel to keep it on course that Gene had set. But you know, it's funny. The makeup lab was this little ramshackled shack that was on the stage behind Stage 8 and 9. It wasn't even Star Trek stage. They rented a corner of it. So we had a lab in there where we were laughing and singing songs, and we used to get out of control. There's some funny stuff. But the thing is that there would be another movie on the stage shooting. Like I remember, I think it was Wayne's World was shooting. And we were making so much noise, we were disrupting Wayne's World. And I didn't know what the hell Wayne's World was. They finally brought in a wig-wag light on a stand and put it in the makeup lab so it would go off and let us know to shut up. The thing about being a makeup artist, and that's one of the things I do miss about being a makeup artist, is that you coexist with the cast. You're living with the cast, day in, day out, in the makeup room, on stage, wiping their nose if it's running. The top of your head is shiny. Can I get you anything? You know. And so it's, you know, I've described it in the past as being, it's like Stockholm Syndrome. You ever hear of Stockholm Syndrome? It's like you're being held captive. when you're doing, especially when you're doing prosthetic makeup, no one wants to go through that. It's only a crazy person who actually wants to go through having makeup put on. You got to get there hours before anyone else. We're going to wash you off with alcohol at 4 in the morning, ice cold, to clean you up. Then we're going to use sticky, horrible glue that doesn't come off. It's like, if I don't take it off, you're not getting it off. It's not going to come off. It's made to stay on for 20 hours, you know? So I've got you a prisoner like that. I'm going to chase you around all day. Make sure you're not eating spaghetti with the rubber lips, you know, which will make them all come. When we did Dick Tracy, and of course on Star Trek too, but we had characters that had rubber lips. You know, Al Pacino had rubber lips. And we used to have, we called them MPs, makeup police. We would have PAs that would follow the actors around to make sure. They'd come back and say, Al's eating a bowl of spaghetti, and we'd have to go over it. Because after lunch, the oil is the one thing that will undo that glue. The lips are coming off, and, you know, you're trying to fix makeup, so you're pulling out pieces of spaghetti, you know? It's kind of disgusting. But so actors will come in, sometimes they're really into it, other times they kind of resist or are offended that you're going to control their lives. They don't like that. Some of them don't. So what I found to be really interesting is that some of them would really hate you at first. I mean, I had this experience on Star Trek too. I mean, I had actors who used to, you know, throw things around and go crazy, you know, but it's a very difficult job, really, when you think of how many hours you have to put into it. You got to memorize and some people don't cope with that well. And so you have to be able to deal with that. You're kind of you know, you have to play psychiatrist sometimes. And when someone goes to the bar and they tell the bartender their troubles, someone goes to the barber shop. You go to the barber shop and the barber hears all that. He goes, oh, I understand. It's the same kind of thing.
Yep.
But anyway, they hate you in the beginning. And then after a while, just like Stockholm Syndrome, they start to fall in love with their captors. And you become their mommy who looks after them, and you're the only one who really cares. You rub their shoulders. And I do miss that.
So is that someone like Michael Dorn? How did he cope with being put into a Klingon mask day in, day out for almost 10 years? You
got to have the right mindset, and Dorn found his mindset. And, you know, like Armin Shimmerman is Quark. That's a really heavy makeup. It's his whole face, too, not just his head or his forehead. And he's
Phillips
just
on Voyager.
An easygoing, you know, Zen attitude. Hey, look, I did a makeup on TNG with Mike and Jerry Quist of Lal, Data's daughter.
Yep. And
when we first meet her, she kind of looks like an Oscar, you know, just like this naked gold statue. And, you know, basically we made a prosthetic diaper that glued around the naughty bits. And as a matter of fact, if you pick up Mike Westmore has a book out called Makeup Man. If you love Star Trek, you should read that book. Aside from that, the Hollywood history is really fun because, well, you know, the Westmore family is famous for pretty much inventing Hollywood makeup. And he's got uncles, and, you know, they go all the way back to, I mean, there was a time when every major studio had a Westmore as the head of the makeup department. You know, Warner Brothers, Hearst Westmore, Frank Westmore was at Paramount, Bud Westmore was at Universal, you know. So anyway, Mike tells the story about Leonard Crowfoot, who was Lal. And basically we told Leonard that we're going to seal you into this thing. It's going to be like a sensory deprivation condom you put on your whole body. And the thing is, Lenny, is that you're not going to be able to pee or anything like that. You could be in the makeup for 18 hours. And he's like, don't worry about it. He says, I'll stop eating and drinking the day before. And he did.
Oh, goodness.
And he never complained. Not once, not ever. Not once, not ever. Of course, we've had actors who will work to make your job miserable. Although Bill Forsyth, who was a flat top in Dick Tracy, you may have seen him in Raising Arizona as one of the escape cons. He plays bad boys all the time, and he was a bad boy in real life, and he hated us in the beginning. he had this whole rubber head that went on, and his hair was pretty long. It was like, to here. And we said, hey, Bill, we're going to have to take time every day to put a bald cap on you, to tuck all that hair up there. Would you consider getting your hair cut? And he looked up at us and he said, will it make your life easier? And we said, yeah, it really would. He goes, well, then you. So it was like he would try to, intimidate us and stuff. But ultimately, and there were times when, bumping chests, but then eventually he ends up loving you. And you actually have a bond that is really amazing. I mean, but Dorn was amazing. He would come in with the newspaper and just make little pithy comments and stuff, and never got tense. He was reading a Wall Street Journal or something like that. And of course, it's really important to have a sense of humor, especially in a business where there's so much tension going on and deadlines and the clock is ticking and, but he never, ever, he was always funny, really amusing. He would come in every morning and Jerry Quist usually would make him up. And I think he had it down to about 45 minutes, so it's not so bad.
It got very good towards the end there. It became a process.
Yeah. No, it becomes a process. You don't even think about it anymore. It's like going to the barber, So
a question for Michael Dorn, I guess, when I meet him, is to ask him what it's like to be naked after spending so long as a Klingon. He's naked as a human.
Not to change the subject too much, but I remember. You remember The Munsters with Fred Gwynne?
Yes. Yeah.
There was an episode where he got hit with a bolt of lightning and it turned him into a human. He didn't have to wear the makeup for an episode, but you remember that one? And
I don't, actually.
They did the same thing on Red Dwarf with Crichton.
Right.
Where a DNA machine turned him into a human being, and he had to, I'm sorry. I'm going off the beaten path here.
Well, it's interesting you say that because DS9 did that as well with Far Beyond the Stars, and you had Mark Alaimo and Jeffrey Coombs and all that playing as humans.
Episodes, we dressed that art department out, and that was really fun to dress the art department out. And I put a lot of my drawings on those walls, and we had all kinds of little gags and stuff. There was you probably noticed there was a set of bongos that Miles. Playing with, and those are my bongos. I still have them, and they were put in there as an homage to Richard Feynman, the physicist. There was an homage to, Armin basically was Harlan Ellison. We knew who all these guys were in reality. It was one guy who was the Isaac Asimov of the group, and so over his desk we had all kinds of drawings of robots and stuff like that. So, but that was really, really, really fun to do that show. And what an unusual show, and so powerful. It's emotionally so powerful. And Avery just lets it all out, boy.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about visual effects later, but I want to stick with makeup because I want to ask you, 26 episodes a season, that's not done anymore. And it's a remarkable feat to think that half of the year has first run content. That must have been absolutely incredible. As part of the makeup team, you receive a script for the next episode and it's another new alien that we haven't seen before. Yeah. How do you go about tackling that?
Well,
on such a tight time frame.
Mike Westmore really handled all of that on Star Trek. I mean, he would go to the production meetings, which, I went to a bunch of them myself. But usually Mike Okuda and Denise Okuda would go when I was in the art department, and when I was in the makeup department, Mike Westmore would go. And they get the script. They'd have to read the script, go to a meeting the next day, go through the script page at a time. Every department chimes in, notes are taken, Then Mike will zero in on the makeup and ask what they think, He says, well, I think they're kind of, fish head guys, or, do you want them to look aquatic? Are they, avians? Or, So Mike will then go home and do some rough sketches. He'll pull pictures out of nature books and stuff like that and do some sketches, and then he'll go and see Rick the next day with some designs. You know, usually you get the script a week ahead. You've got like a week to prepare for the next show.
Wow.
Oh, it's exciting. It's wonderful. And I think back how lucky I was to do so many in several different departments where there were 24 episodes or so. How exciting, how lucky we were. You know, the trouble is that television that pie has been so finely sliced by the internet and streaming and stuff like that no one wants to make that kind of commitment anymore. When there were like 3 networks like NBC, ABC, CBS, and some syndicated channels, that's a lot of fat for just, 4, 5, you might have had HBO then, but there was a lot more money to be made. It was less risky, I think. And plus people are, there's so much is available now. It's really,
spoilt for choice.
Yeah, I mean, TV shows like, Roseanne had huge ratings for her comeback, but I think that unless you're a smash like The Walking Dead, you might be getting 11 million. It's probably more like 3 to 5 million. But back during the 60s, say, when the original series was on, you were expected to get, several times that. And still be on a soap bubble, whether they're going to renew you, Shows used to get unbelievable ratings. Huge ratings.
Was that something with Star Trek being syndicated for TNG and DS9 that was a little bit more consistent? There was almost sort of a guarantee of many years of Trek work, or not really?
The TV series, TNG was a smash, and DS9 was as well. I think that it started to taper off after that, and I think it was because the way they marketed the show totally changed after DS9. If I remember correctly, the shows were basically given to syndicated stations, and that Paramount would reap a portion of the advertising that was put on during the show. And that way the show, it wasn't like it was on the same time all across the country. The local net stations, I mean, I think that TNG was basically considered syndicated. As a matter of fact, I have a Emmy nom up there. It says Star Trek The Next Generation, SYN. It's a syndicated show, so they could put the show where they knew their audiences were. And that really worked really, really well. They did that on DS9. DS9 really did great. But after that, isn't that about when they wanted to try to do UPN?
Yes, and Voyager launched UPN,
yes.
And that's why it's a short season, short first season.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a raging success?
Wow. That's a shame. I've seen shows like now. I was on a show called Beyond that lasted 2 seasons. The first season, they released them all on the internet at the same time. And the numbers it got were fantastic. But the second season, they released them every week or so, and the ratings took a nosedive. So I think that the model today is don't string your episodes out. Make them all available, all at the same time. So people sit down and they become totally hooked.
Yeah.
And they watch. Did you ever see the Portlandia on Battlestar Galactica?
No, it's a series I've actually got to catch up on.
Oh well, just go to YouTube and type in Portlandia Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
And they play a couple who are about to go out to a party.
Right.
And the husband really doesn't want to go, She's going, oh, come on, they're our friends. And he picks up, well, how about this? And it's like BSG. Someone gave him a disc of BSG. And he says, come on, why don't we, let's watch one before we go. He's like, oh, okay. And they sit down and it cuts to the end, the very end of an episode. And they're like, oh, my God, that was incredible. How about one more? And it actually goes on. It goes on for like a week. She's got a bladder infection. They turn the lights, the power out on the house. Then they're paying their bills. You have to see it. It was really wonderful. But the thing is that they found out that if you watch a show and are able to go from episode to episode to episode, you become way, way more involved and addicted than you ever did with the Wait a Week.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, the shows came every week. But now
have a choice.
It's like, here's a episode. I know it was out this way on Enterprise. There'd be an episode, and then there maybe 2 weeks would go by.
Yeah.
And it was that gets your audience upset. And I think that if you want to get people hooked, just let it all out, let the whole season out at the same time, and let people live through those episodes.
My mum actually made that comment about Discovery. She wished that it was all out at once so that we could binge it and watch it, and when it got really good, be able to keep going and keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
Because something that my mum finds, and I find it as well, when you're trying to create a season-long plot arc, having to get me to come back every week and remember every intricate detail doesn't work. Whereas if you release everything at once, you can put all these little plot threads in there, and you can follow along, and you can go, oh, that's right, back then it was a look from character A to character B, and this time that actually means that this backstory bit that we now know happened. So I think the TV landscape has changed for the better or the worse. What do you think, Doug?
Well, it's evolving, and good stuff comes out. Sometimes I miss the 3 powerful networks who spent a lot of money, and that every fall there'd be a fall season where all the networks would release. That was like Christmas time, all the new shows. I mean, I enjoyed that, but what's happening now is I'm seeing, well, this is really interesting. Television shows are now being released on the internet for streaming, right alongside huge monster budget movies. There's no distinction anymore. If you're going to do a TV series, you got to pour a lot into it to make it wonderful, so that it could stand up next to everything else, because everyone's available to get all this stuff. You don't have to go to the movies anymore, and so the studios that are willing to take chances, are gutsier, are putting a lot of money into television shows that are becoming smash hits. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. I mean, that's a lot of money they spend on that, but. So you're getting a television show that is like feature quality. And this is what people expect. I mean, you go back and look at the television shows that were made in the 60s now, and looking pretty fan filmish. Not all of them. Hey, I'll tell you something. That original Star Trek series really holds up. Even when it's looking creaky, and we know the technology is stone knives and bearskins, you still dig the hell out of the episode. Such an honesty to it.
They embraced what they had, I think.
Well,
it really shows.
That you can respond to having no money by being really clever, and that charm remains even 50 years later. I always felt that they took it seriously. It was, look, I loved Lost in Space as a kid, but I knew it was goofy as hell. And I never felt that Irwin Allen really loved science fiction. I thought he was just making kiddie shows sometimes. But I always had the sensation that there were people behind the scenes on Star Trek that really loved science fiction. I know that Gene really loved science fiction. He was a big science fiction fan. A lot of people in the business, it's a job. But there are certain directors and producers who feel a loyalty to genres that they grew up with and loved. And you can tell the difference, That's what the original series comes from, a real solid place, a real solid way of telling a story that Gene aspired to. When you look at Star Trek, you don't see his name on a lot of the episodes. But you know that he did a lot of rewriting, especially in the first season. That's where he did most of his rewriting. And as a matter of fact, I've heard him criticized for not being, you know, a really in the trenches writer, and that he doesn't understand what it's like. But if you take the time and you look at his career, Have Gun Will Travel, for instance, with Richard Boone, which is very similar to Star Trek in many ways. Paladin is a character who is basically Kirk, Spock, and McCoy squeezed together. Gene basically took Paladin and split him 3 ways. But the thing was that Gene cut his teeth on Have Gun Will Travel, and he wrote a freaking 24 episodes of that show. 24 episodes. Some of them are my favorites. So you can see the follow-through from those early shows. The thing that realize about television from the late 50s, especially, which is where Have Gun started, is that the audiences were actually a little more sophisticated than audiences today. Now audiences, it's everybody. It's the great unwashed masses and some washed masses too. But the thing was that in the late 50s, only the more sophisticated, well-to-do people had televisions. So that's why there were a lot of drama shows that were on back then, Alcoa Theater and, you know, stuff like that, which really is where, you know, shows like The Twilight Zone sprang from that era of television with a lot of, you know, very dramatic TV started. Television drama in the 1950s in New York was, you know, but anyway, I'm getting off the path here. The thing was that Roddenberry, that's why those shows hold up. That's why they hold up. That's why you could watch, and honestly, I know that a lot of Battlestar Galactica fans won't agree with me, but when I went to work on the reboot, I said, I'm going to rewatch all those episodes, and I got them all, and I sat down and watched them, and man, a lot of them are unwatchable. You know, if you see it through the eyes of a kid, it will be possibly endearing in the same way that Lost in Space is still endearing, you know. But Star Trek continues, just like a lot of old Twilight Zone episodes, still continue to be engaging, you know. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Mate, I enjoy it, and I just love listening to you, but we are out of time on this week's show. So if you're willing, stick around, because I'd love to chat to you about the later years of Star Trek in the golden years, Doug.
Sure, sounds great.